Wait the
F.
up.
Traveler.
We have a
Teyvat to mount.
I'm looking forward to this.
Greetings everyone and welcome to my YouTube channel. This is Luis Redder reporting for duty, and today I'm proud to bring you my Pyro Kaeya build and my Melt Kaeya build. My Pyro Kaeya build was recently showcased in Majestic Multigaming channel, so you might be asking what is the difference between the Pyro Kaeya and the Melt Kaeya builds. The major difference is that the Pyro Kaeya build requires Constellation 6 Bennett, so because of this it's not really a free-to-play friendly build, though it is possible as free-to-play. But the biggest drawback of the Pyro Kaeya build is that you have to make a huge commitment by unlocking Constellation 6 Bennett, because once you unlock it, there's no going back. And because of this, it might ruin a lot of party compositions that requires Bennett up to Constellation 5, for example physical damage builds. And because of this big drawback, I came up with the idea for the Melt Kaeya build that does not require Bennett at all, it is free to play friendly, and it is a great beginner starting party. So without further ado, let's start with the Melt Kaeya party. Melt Kaeya. What is so special about this team composition? The most important aspect is the Melt Elemental reaction, an elemental reaction capable of doubling the damage that triggers it. So if an enemy is already affected by Pyro and you use a Cryo attack to trigger the Melt Elemental reaction, the triggering attack will receive a 50% damage bonus. On the other hand, if the enemy is already affected by Cryo and you trigger the Melt Elemental reaction with Pyro, the triggering attack will receive a 100% damage bonus. And to ensure we are getting the stronger version of Melt most of the times, we bring the Frozen Elemental reaction into play. Because once an enemy is frozen, the only elemental reaction that can happen is the stronger version of Melt in this particular party configuration. And as you can see here, even enemies that are immune to Cryo are susceptible to being frozen, so my Cryo attacks are still useful since they are preparing the ground for the stronger version of Melt to occur. And because Pyro and Cryo are somewhat opposite elements, this party becomes extremely versatile and flexible, because if we encounter enemies that are immune to Cryo, such as the Cryo Slimes, our Pyro attacks will be dealing double damage, and if we encounter enemies that are immune to Pyro, our Cryo attacks will be dealing 50% more damage. So why Kaeya as the main carry DPS for the party? And the keyword again is versatility. Kaeya has the strongest normal attack multipliers among sword users, even stronger than 5-star characters. His elemental burst constantly applies the cryo debuff, and it's arguably the best elemental burst for constant cryo application. He's probably the only bruiser in the game currently, which means he sports the means for self-sustaining. He also gets a shield ability as his Constellation 4, which together with his healing passive allow him to stay on the field way longer than other characters if you fail to dodge constantly, which for Kaeya isn't a problem, because he is one of the fastest characters in the game dodge-wise. But this is not confirmed yet, and I haven't seen anyone test it yet to compare with the other characters. And finally, he has a low elemental skill cooldown, which allows for extra elemental reactions, and it generates a lot of energy thanks to one of his passives. So finally, let's talk about team composition. This is the setup that I'll be showing throughout the Melt Kaeya part of the guide. This will be the first Melt Kaeya setup that you will be able to make once you complete Xiangling's story quest to get her for free. And as you can see, it is more than enough to defeat all the bosses in just one DPS window. So in my opinion, this is one of, if not the best beginner starting party that you can get, unless you manage to get some lucky 5-star characters. Kaeya and Xiangling are the core members of this party, and Amber and Barbara are replaceable once you get better characters. But even Amber and Barbara are useful, because Amber will be unlocking the 25% damage bonus from the Pyro Elemental Resonance, and Barbara will serve as your healer until you can get a better one. But she can also enhance one of your character's attacks while equipped with the Thrilling Tales of the Dragon Slayer book. Now for the intermediate version of the build, we have a lot of options for characters. For example, Xinqiu as a replacement for Amber. With her, you would still keep the Pyro Elemental Resonance, and she would also bring a lot of utility to the party, especially because she can buff Kaeya's physical damage, as well as reduce enemies' physical resistance once you unlock her constellations. And she also provides a shield to the party. To keep the Pyro Elemental Resonance, you can also use Bennett, because even though he is not mandatory for the Melt Kaeya team composition, he is still one of the best available options. He serves not only as the team initiator, with his ultimate boosting your other characters' bursts, but he can also become the party healer. And by becoming the party healer, we can replace Barbara with better options. And one of them is Sucrose, because Sucrose provides a lot of elemental mastery for her teammates with her passives, boosting even further Xiangling melt reactions. But the other benefit of having Sucrose is that she is an animal character, which means she can use the Viridescent Venerer set, which is one of the best support artifact sets, because it can drastically reduce the enemy resistances. But my favorite character to replace Barbara is Xinqiu, and he becomes the third mandatory member of the party, since he is basically a Swiss army knife, providing healing, providing damage reduction, providing interruption resistance, constantly applying the Hydro debuff on enemies to allow the frozen elemental reaction, and providing a huge DPS increase with his elemental burst. With this we have the Advanced Melt Kaeya team composition, and as I mentioned previously, Bennett is not mandatory for this party set, so he can be replaced with other options. And one of them is Albedo. I think most of you are aware of how strong Albedo is. His elemental skill adds a lot of DPS to Kaeya's normal attacks, and it lasts for a really long time, thus you don't need to be switching too often between him and Kaeya. But he will also be boosting his teammates with 125 elemental mastery via one of his passives every time he uses his elemental burst. But then, instead of Albedo, we can even use Xinqiu, which alongside Kaeya would be unlocking the Cryo Elemental Resonance for the 15% extra crit rate against frozen or cryo affected enemies, which would be still valuable to this team composition, because melt triggering pyro attacks against frozen enemies would have a 15% extra chance of scoring a critical hit. Xinqiu will also be providing more cryo debuffs to enemies with her elemental burst, and her passive talent would be increasing Kaeya's cryo attacks by 20% if he is inside the area of effect of her elemental burst. As for the weapons recommendations, they are the following. For Kaeya we have the Prototype Ranker, which sports a really high base damage, it's good for physical builds, it is craftable, and you receive one of them as an Adventure Rank 10 reward. Next we have the Black Cliff Longsword. It is also a really good option for Kaeya, sporting a high base damage, the same as the Ranker. Its passive is a double-edged blade, because it's really powerful against weaker enemies and mobs, but it is useless against single bosses, and inconsistent against harder enemies, for example the ones you encounter in the Abyss. It can be bought from the shop from time to time. Finally, if you don't mind spending money of the game, there's the Black Sword, which has a crit rate as the second option, a really valuable second option. It provides utility with a really good healing ability every time you score a critical rate, and it is acquired via buying the Battle Pass. Any of the 5-star swords should be really good on Kaeya, but currently the best sword for this build is the Aquila Favonia, having an absurd high base damage, a high physical damage bonus, and providing a healing ability. An honorable 3-star sword mention is the Fillet Blade, as well as the Harbinger of Dawn, but only if you can maintain your health at above 90%. Next we have Xiangling's picks for weapons. The one that I recommend the most, and that is the one I'm currently using with my Xiangling, is the Black Cliff Pole. And the sole reason why I recommend it so much, because of the insane crit damage bonus that it provides, reaching up to 55% critical damage at level 90. Another reasonable option is the prototype Star Glitter, thanks to its energy recharge second option, which allows you to get a higher uptime on Xiangling's elemental burst. For Xinqiu, there's two viable goals that you can aim for while picking a weapon for him. The first is to get the highest possible uptime on his elemental burst, which you can do by picking weapons that provide energy recharge. The available 3-star sword for this is the Sky Rider sword, which provides the energy recharge and also provides a small attack bonus every time Xinqiu activates his elemental burst. Next, as the available 4-star sword is the Sacrificial Sword, the most recommended sword for Xinqiu, which also provides the energy recharge, but it also has an ability that provides a chance for the elemental skill to reset its own cooldown, which then can be used 2 times in a row for the purpose of creating energy particles. As for the second goal you can aim for while choosing a weapon for Xinqiu, is to choose one that provides the most DPS as possible for his elemental burst, and the Harbinger of Dawn is excellent in doing this, because since Xinqiu won't be on the field while his elemental burst is active, you can easily maintain the 90% HP threshold on the Harbinger of Dawn, so that you can make use of its crit rate bonus. And this is my personal weapon of choice for Xinqiu, because for me I get enough energy recharge from an energy recharge timepiece artifact. So this way I don't have to pick a weapon with the energy recharge option, and instead can focus on getting the maximum DPS as possible on my Xinqiu's burst. I will be recommending on this guide only weapons and artifacts to the characters that I consider mandatory for the Melt build. But since Bennett is also mandatory for the Pyro Kaeya build, I will be recommending his weapons and artifacts. Bennett's main use on both the Pyro and Melt Kaeya builds is to use his elemental burst as the initiator for the party, hence why I personally like to equip him with an energy recharge weapon. And I personally think the Festering Desire is a good sword for this purpose. Alternatively, if you don't have an energy recharge weapon for him, your goal is to equip him with the available sword with the highest base damage as possible, because Bennett's burst increases his teammates' attacks based on his own base damage. And if I'm not mistaken, the weapon damage is calculated into the base damage. Now let's talk about the artifact sets. The first option for Kaeya is the 4-piece Gladiator's Finale set, which will boost his normal attacks. If you choose this set option, your goal with Kaeya will be to use the 1-2-3 cancel combo. And the cancel can be done by either jumping at the end of the 3rd hit, which doesn't consume stamina at all, or can be done by dodging at the end of the 3rd hit, which consumes stamina but yields the most DPS. Next we have the 2-piece Gladiator and the 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry. This build focuses on Kaeya's normal and charge attacks. Next we have the 2-piece Gladiator Finale and the 2-piece Blizzard Strayer. This set will be used to focus more on Kaeya's elemental burst and elemental skill damage. Lastly, we have the 2-piece Blizzard Strayer and the 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry. With this set, it will be a mix between normal attacking damage and elemental burst and skill damage. Any of these options should work just fine for the Melt Kaeya build, and for any of these, the most damaging Kaeya combo will be the 1-2 charge attack combo. Xiangling's set is pretty straightforward. Your goal is to maximize her elemental burst damage, and in my opinion the best way to do this is to use the 2-piece Noblesse Oblige set and the 2-piece Crimson Witch of Flames. The same thing applies for Xinqiu, which can be done with the 2-piece Noblesse Oblige and the 2-piece Heart of Death. But if no one in the team is already using the 4th-piece Noblesse Oblige set, Xinqiu can be the one to use it. Bennett's also a strong candidate to use the 4-piece Noblesse Oblige set, and it is the current set that I'm using on my Bennett, but I plan on switching the 4th-piece Noblesse Oblige set for the 4-piece Instructor set to provide more elemental mastery to Xiangling, and the fact that the Instructor set only goes max to 4-star level isn't so detrimental here, because as previously explained, only Bennett's base attack damage counts for his burst attack boost. These are what I consider the optimal artifact sets for the party. You can obviously use other artifact sets efficiently, such as the Berserker set if you still can't get the optimal sets I show here. And now, finally, let's talk about the Pyro Kaeya team composition. As previously mentioned, the biggest difference between the Pyro Kaeya and the Melt Kaeya team is the addition of Bennett's last constellation, which will infuse Kaeya's normal attacks with pyro damage. And because of this, the artifact set that you want to be using with Kaeya on this build is the full Gladiator's Finale set. The reason for the 4-piece Gladiator's Finale set is versatility. It will be boosting Kaeya's normal attacks damage when infused by Bennett's Elemental Burst, but it will also allow Kaeya to still pack a punch against enemies that are immune to Pyro, in a scenario where you can't be using Bennett's Elemental Burst. As for the party team composition, Xiangling is not a mandatory teammate anymore, and instead you could be replacing her with Xinqiu or Albedo, but her synergy to this particular party is still quite strong, especially because on Constellation 1, her Guba elemental skill will lower the enemy's pyro resistance, and at Constellation 6, her burst will give a 15% pyro damage bonus to all her teammates while it is active, further increasing Kaeya's normal attacks when they are infused by Bennett's burst. And that's all she wrote. Hope this guide proves to be useful to you. And if you have any doubts or questions, feel free to post them in the comment section. I always do my best to answer every single question in my comment section. Thank you very much for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to support more Kaeya awesomeness.